Everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. And you've taken up a new subject, which is on DORA compliance. And thank you again for the suggestions that uh, you know ensured that this thing happened. Just give me a moment. I'll just get online with my presentation. I just hope you can see my screen. I've just shared my presentation. In case you are unable to, then do let me know, and I will relook at it. And you've got a team standing by in case you have any issues, and we can then take up your queries if at all. And as we go ahead, I hope you can you can even see, you can hear me well. If you can hear me well, just give a thumbs up or click on the chat or something. So that will help me understand that you are able to hear me. I hope you can hear me, everyone. I guess you can. All right. So starting off, this is our the webinar today is on DORA Compliance Essentials, a guide for CISOs and compliance officers. So this is a new standard that has come up. And before we go ahead, that's our YouTube page, and feel free to visit it. You can just search the InfoSec. I'm just putting the link in your chat box also. And what can happen is that you can go over there, you can subscribe to our channel, and that will help you understand and get a lot of more content on PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, SOC 1, SOC 2, ethical hacking, so many areas. Brief about me, we've been in this industry for like almost 30 years now. And primarily speaking, I've got my own company, this time for SEC, and we are there for many areas actually. As you can read, I don't like to talk much on this, but I'm myself a PCI QSS, CISA, CSSP, CRS 27001, and we are there for ISO 27001 PCI DSS, many things. And my company is there, and we are totally vendor neutral. We do a lot of audits and stuff. Okay, and towards the end of the webinar, you'll get a survey participation request to fill it up and send it back, so that helps us understand whether it is negative or positive or anything. Help us understand that whether you are okay with what happened with the content that was shown, and if you have any queries, or if you have any further recommendations for webinars. All right. As I said earlier, if you're unable to hear me or see my shared screen, do drop in a message in the chat box or something, but I really would love to hear your feedback, positive or otherwise. All right, moving ahead. This is very important. Like we host very regular webinars, and all our webinars are for free. Hundreds of people attend our webinars. So it's really not possible to give something like a CP certificates to everyone, continual professional education certificates. But what you can do is that while you're filling up the CP, you can fill up that you have attended so-and-so webinar. And in case the council like ISACA or ISA2 or PCI or anyone have any queries, they write to us, and then we check the records to confirm that you have actually attended the webinar. If yes, then we respond. So please don't write to me asking for the webinar CP certificates. We don't provide it. What we'll cover today? We'll be covering what is DORA, how does it matter, who must comply, and the core requirements is also very important. We'll be looking at also third-party risk management, and then preparing for DORA. And then last but not the least are the FAQs that we have seen in our experience on DORA. Full form, Digital Operational Resilience Act. Digital Operational Resilience Act, that's what it is. And so it's a EU resolution, European Union resolution that was drafted in 2022, and it was designed to enhance the operational resilience. Now the keyword over here is operational resilience. That is something that you have to really tie a knot on it. So it will help you remember again and again that this is about operational resilience. This is not about an overall bouquet for information security like what you see in a PCI or an ISO or like ISO 27K, or that you see in a standard like a SOC 2. This standard is only for operational resilience. So that is something that you really need to keep in mind, and ensure that you are very clearly understanding what this is all about. So it is basically for ensuring that there is uniform operational resilience standards across all the EU financial entities, and ensures consistent ICT risk management. Now, risk management is something, I've been around for 30 years now in the infosec audit industry. And now, one thing that I've seen is if I speak to 10 people about how a risk management has to be done, I'll get 10 different opinions. There is no standard. There is a standard. There is a NIST standard SP 800 guideline for how this is to be done. But more often than not, there will be people who will not really be, aware of it, and they'll have their own understanding of what DORA is all about and how ICT risk management has to be done. So it gives a standard for how risk management has to be done in your organization. And it is basically for the resilience within the financial sectors and other supporting, uh, functions. It is applies to more than 22,000 entities. So it is not meant for a very, you know, um, lean sliver of people attending for, DORA. It is for 22,000 entities within the EU, including banks, insurance firms, ICT providers, everything. So it all comes over there for DORA compliance. And then it requires a very robust ICT framework and even holds third party ICT service providers accountable for the impact on financial operations, right? So this is something which is you need to be very much in touch of what's happening. So it's not just for the banks. Many people feel, as I speak to companies, that they only feel that this is for banks. Um, so this is not only for banks. It is banks plus many other organization types, which you'll get into also. So it addresses the cyber threats with mandated ICT risk management frameworks. Now, again, cyber threats with regards to operational resilience and the supporting control frameworks. So the third point is something that you can think about. It helps financial entities withstand and recover from ICT related incidents. So again, the factor is resilience, right? So again, it reduces market regulatory inconsistencies because, as I said earlier, when we talk about the process, say, even for business continuity, or we are talking about, say, third-party risk management. So everyone has their own, understanding of how this has to be done. So this is where DORA comes into place. So and it sets the framework for third-party management, operational risk management, and even for a risk framework and operational resilience. And it helps boost the consumer trust because what happens is you have then are demonstrating commitment to security and continuity. So this is the timeline overall for DORA. So back in 2020, you can see that from 2022 onwards, the European Parliament approved the DORA registration, and then it adopted it within a period of days. And then we see in September in 2023 that the public consultation for the policy and the framework went out, and then we see that in January it had actually entered the force, and then we see that in 2024, that's just this year, January 17, the delivery of the first batch of public policy documents by the European service authorities came into place. So then there was a second batch of policy products, which was there in March, and then in July the delivery was finalized. The decision was made on the second batch, right? And from January 2nd, 17, 2025, exactly 1 year after the first batch, DORA becomes mandatory for all the organization. Now, which organization? This is it. So you have to realize that there are three basic key regulatory areas to oversee and enforce compliance. The number one would be the European Banking Authority, EBA as it is called, which will oversee DORA compliance in banks, credit institutions, payment service providers. This is for within the ICT risk management and operational resilience within the banking sector. Next comes European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority, EIOPA. So this supervises the insurance companies and pension funds and then focuses on ICT risk management, resilience testing, and incident reporting for the protection of the policyholders. Then comes the ESMA, European Securities and Markets Authority. So this is basically for the supervising the securities market. So we have the EBA, which oversees the banks, credit unions, and payment service providers. EIOPA, which supervises the insurance and the pension funds. And then the ESMA, which is European Securities and Market Authority, which is looking after the securities market, investment firms, and financial markets infrastructure. So that these are the three key regulatory bodies whose responsibility is to enforce and oversee compliance of DORA. And who must comply? So this is the comprehensive list. All the financial institutes that you can think about falling under banks, credit unions, investment firms, insurance companies, payment service providers, trading venues, crypto asset, crowdfunding, pension funds, financial markets, asset management, all come under it. And not just that, look at the right side. Third-party ICT providers. Again, we have cloud service providers, data analytics providers, managed service providers, cybersecurity providers, all these people who are then an integral part of the service providers for the financial institutions are coming under it. So it is fairly comprehensive. And then what are the core requirements? Now, are you really need to pay attention over here with for regards to the core requirements of DORA? There is the ICT risk management framework, the overall arcing and the overall controlling the risk management. Then there is the incident reporting. Then the third party risk management, and last but not the least would be the operational resilience testing. So to comply with DORA, operations organizations must implement a very comprehensive ICT risk management framework. Now, as I said earlier, you can refer to the SP 800 series for how it is to be done, for how risk management has to be done. I believe that's like the Bible of how this has to be done. So this should have, multiple levels requirements are there within the risk management framework. One is a policy procedure as to how, risk is identified, assessed, and mitigated. Next could be the monitoring part. So it cannot be just a one-time thing. Then you need to set up the controls for control activities for continuously monitoring the systems for risk and vulnerabilities and threats and all. The third part would be the regular updates. That is, update the framework. So what happens is that over here in the policy development, you have developed a framework, but then as you're regularly monitoring the risk, you will notice that there are some gaps, or as your business is growing, as the risk landscape is changing, you'll notice some gaps. So that's where these frameworks needs to be updated. Whatever your policies and procedures are there, they need to be updated. Last part is something which is enterprises becomes a concern for enterprises. What happens is that in whatever we have seen with large enterprises where we've done risk management, we have seen that many a time organizations have something called as an ERM for enterprise risk management, and then there is an IRM for information risk management, and these two have nothing in common. They'll be working almost independently. ERM is done with a huge amount of due diligence. But then IRM, it is like find the person who in the IT team who doesn't have much to do and do it with that person. That's how the typical strategy is seen in many companies. Here, it has to be aligned with the enterprise risk strategy. You cannot have two separate IRM, ERM, and all those things. You need to have, of course, the coverage will be different. I know that. But what will happen is that you need to have a separate process. You need to have an integration of the processes of IRM and ERM. The way risk is identified, the way the processes, critical process is identified, the way the treatment is done, the testing is done, the monitoring is done, the updates are done, has to be the same across the enterprise risk strategy, including the IRM. Then there is the incident reporting. Now you might have a very nice system in place, but let's assume if there is an incident. So if there is a disruption, it could be some malware, it could be some power failure, it could be some flood or fire, so many things. So how do you manage that? That is where incident reporting process, which is literally one of the bedrock requirements in any standard that you name it, whether it is the NIST, CSF, cybersecurity framework, or we're talking about PCI DSS, or we're talking about ISO standards, anyone, or if you're talking about something like a SOC 2 or something, you need to have incident reporting in place. That is where this helps. And so if you have already a good compliance structure, then this will be like almost you would be having it in place. Then the next would be the ICT third-party risk management. Now, this thing is something which I was a bit surprised why when I read the standard as to why they have DORA, the regulatory bodies have included this. I was wondering why this is included in the first place. So one thing that I've noticed in enterprise clients is that uh, almost all the services in most of the enterprise customers are outsourced to third-party vendors. That is done for operational reasons. That is done for financial reasons. That's done for having a very lean team. So many a times, just the managerial staff is of the company, and the rest all lower level task, day-to-day task, operational task is outsourced. Now, in this case, now just imagine a huge bank, and just think about a huge bank. I'm not trying to badmouth any bank. I'm just taking this as a very random example. Let's assume, say, Bank of America, or we're talking about Bank of London or stuff like that. So, or Citibank. Now these HSBC or something. So these are like multi-billion dollar banks. They can literally afford to buy any and all technologies and the best people in the world. Their ICT risk management. But when they are outsourcing their functions to a smaller company, those smaller companies' turnover might hardly be a few $1 million here and there. So they really don't have it in themselves to be able to invest in the time and the resources that we can see in with a Citibank or a HSBC. Now, I'm not saying that there is something wrong with this bank. Don't get me wrong. I'm just taking a random name. So if these vendors are not able to maintain their risk management standards as per the cities and the Bank of Americas and the Bank of HSBC and so many other banks and financial institutions, then they become the weak link in the chain for even resilience, operational resilience. So that is where DORA insists on vendor assessment and having appropriate contractual safeguards in place. Now, for many companies, it stops with these two that have a very good onboarding assessment framework and then contractual safeguards that in case anything happens, you are responsible and who's responsible. That is where the contractual issue comes into place. Contractual safeguards are there, but then that's where the ongoing monitoring is required. There is continuous review the performance and the risk of third-party providers. Then there's a contingency plan. So what if you have you outsourced maybe a customer support or maybe database management to a particular vendor, and that vendor fails to provide support. Maybe their key database guy has gone for a toss, or maybe the CRM that they're using for providing customer support to your clients to the organization has shut down, or maybe the license is gone, or maybe there's a malware attack, or maybe the key persons have resigned or left or dead or whatever be the case. Then what will happen? It will impact terribly the primary organization, right? So that's why the contingency plans is very important, so that in case a vendor fails to do the critical service, and if there is a service disruption, there is at least a plan B. So if there is a customer support agency that you have, so you should have at least 2 or 3, so that in case there is a problem, at least work will still go on, albeit a bit slow, or maybe the numbers would be engaged a few times, but at least there is somebody there in case of emergency. The last part is finally the key part, which is the OR of DORA, which is operational resilience testing. Right. So this is where the resilience testing and management of DORA becomes extremely important. There is a scenario-based testing. So what I mean by that? So scenario-based testing is identifying the right scenarios to be tested for operational effectiveness, operational resilience effectiveness. So many a time we have seen, not many times, a few times I've seen that this scenario has to be derived from something called as a business impact analysis. Let's assume, not let's assume. I've seen in some cases that companies, the BIA has shown a different list of critical, failure scenarios, but the actual testing is done of something really weird. For example, I've seen like, what if the CCTV stops working? What if the engineer doesn't reach on time? So, but actually, for that enterprise, the scenarios identified in the BIA is different. But what they have done is they have taken a shortcut in the testing. And that is where it is very important that the scenario-based testing is done appropriately as per the identified critical scenarios. Should be the penetration testing. So regularly test your systems to identify vulnerabilities and fix them in a proactive manner. So again, this becomes very important because in case there is a issue and there is a virus or a malware, it can shut down your system. Then comprehensive reporting. So this has to be. We always recommend that this has to be the 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 regular plan testing has to be done by in the monitoring of a reliable third party or a very independent internal person or department, right? So, and that department or person is supposed to be doing the reporting also of the way the test results happened and the action plans came into being for addressing the weaknesses. And then, of course, we see the stakeholder involvement. It cannot be just just the lower level operational guys are doing it, and the stakeholders like the CISOs, the CTOs, and the CEOs are having no idea what is happening. So the stakeholder involvement, internal and external, is extremely important to ensure the thorough preparedness of the infrastructure and the processes. The third party risk management, this is again, I'm coming back to this. So, because see, disruptions or vulnerabilities in these vendors, especially the critical vendors, can cause operational downtime, it can cause data breaches, it can cause cybersecurity incidents, service delivery failures, cascading risk, and of course, legal liabilities. I always give the example of this casino in Las Vegas. What had happened was, of course, it's a casino, so it will have like a multi-million-dollar security framework. But what had happened is they had given the management of uh, their fish aquarium, the massive fish aquarium that you must have seen in these, you know, in these casinos to a third party. And what we used to do is that this third party, to make it easier for them to manage, they had kept a simple user ID password and which was consistent across all their clients. Hackers simply compromised that password and entered the casino's network via the fish aquarium setup, caused a breach, and made off with a good amount of cash. So anyway, so this thing is a very good example as to how third-party risk can impact your organization. They can become literally the weakest link in the chain, and that is where DORA places a very significant emphasis on the operational resilience of financial institutions, where third-party ICT providers play a very critical role. And what are the liabilities? What are the challenges that we have seen? This is what you're seeing. The limited visibility. That is, many a time these clients, these third-party vendors, work with with a level of opacity because they don't want to show that there is some weaknesses in their setup, or they don't have the financial background or the competence background. We have having XYZ technologies or processes, so they make up stories. And many a time, what happens is that these people, so there is a limited, so they don't give access. So that is where it gets difficult to gain insight into vendor operations, security controls, and risk posture, because many a time, even we have seen that these vendors lack. What about the complex supply chains? What I mean by that, and we have worked with large telecoms and other organizations, banking structures and all, where they have literally outsourced, for example, the entire application management to third parties. So there is one third party who is doing the so there is an internal organization that is doing the planning. There is a third party that is doing the coding. Then there is another third party who's doing the testing. There is a UA and the QA part. And then there is another third party who's also doing the technical assessment, like the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So this becomes extremely important for getting on with it. Getting what I'm trying to get into with regards to this setup. So this is where it is very important that you also have a good understanding and a good visibility, especially in this interlinking of vendors, and each vendor is dependent on some other vendor for their efficiency. And what happens in that is because of the obscure way of working, many a time it gets very difficult to lay the blame on somebody as to why something has failed. That is where again, it gets important that companies take due recognition, cognitions of what is going on and ensure that there is a proper visibility. Then what about the compliance gaps? So again, ICT providers may be lagging behind, closing the gap. And as I said earlier, many a time they lie. So this becomes very, very important to ensure that there is a proper visibility, and of course the compliance gaps are closed and it is validated by the primary organization's compliance staff. And of course, resource constraints. I've seen enterprises with like 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 third-party vendors. So how do you monitor these vendors? So many vendors, their operational efficiency. So this is where again the resource constraints comes into place with regards to ensuring that the vendors are up to the mark. Then there is the incident reporting delays. Many a time to avoid losing a contract or getting penalized, the vendors simply hide that there has been a breach. And you've seen it ourselves that they actually hide. So that is where again the monitoring and coordination with the third party, especially the critical third parties, is extremely important. And there is a vendor lock-in risk. So what happens is that as I said earlier, many a times there's a vendor lock-in risk where there is a lot of reliance on a single provider for a service, and in case that vendor is not there, you are in trouble. That's where again the resilience issue comes into play. Legal and contractual ambiguities. In many organizations, again, we have seen that the only reason a particular vendor gets selected is because of the cost factor. And there is literally a run-of-the-mill NDA and a contract that is signed. And, what should be the exit clause? What should be the tolerable SLAs? All those things we have not seen it documented very often. And then what about the privacy concerns? Again, as I said earlier, the vendor might not have the resources and the cash to have a very strong data privacy setup in place, especially when there is something like a GDPR also kicked in. So then, in this market, in this world of outsourcing, there is a DORA. If there's an organization which is coming under DORA, which is there, say in Germany, or it's there in UK, or it is there in Spain or someone, and they have outsourced their operations to somebody in India or Philippines, then those organizations over there are not covered under DORA because they are out of the jurisdiction. And that is where the oversight comes into place of international vendors. So how to tie them up to ensure that the DORA compliance happens with those out of jurisdiction vendors also is something that you need to think about. How you can do that? You can enhance by having a very comprehensive third-party risk management. You can streamline the multi-tier oversight by having a centralized framework. Many a time there are very, very good apps and there are applications online in place that can help you streamline the intermesh of applications, intermesh of vendor ecosystems, and then ensure DORA compliance. You need to have this as a part of your SLA. That is, DORA has to be implemented by all your vendors, third parties, whether in EU or outside of EU. And there should be, maybe you can appoint a good auditor who can do the audits, or you can have an internal audit done of those vendors also to ensure that they are compliant. And then, of course, allocate the adequate resources to ensure that all these hundreds and thousands of vendors and third parties are monitored in an appropriate manner. Then, last but not the least, will be the establishing the incident reporting protocols. That how soon and how should the vendor be reporting to you, under what circumstance, so what defines an incident, and how soon they should be, and what data would be required, from whom it should be done. All those things should be covered as a part of your incident reporting protocols. Then again, I said earlier, mitigate your vendor lock-in, that is diversify vendors. You need to strengthen your legal contracts by having the SLA as per the contract that is drawn up with the vendor, and it cannot be just a generic contract which is shared in place. Because based on that SLA and based on those KPIs and KRAs, if I can call it, what can happen is that it forms a very good framework for having your reviews, regular reviews, and then protecting your data privacy. Again, how are you going to do that? Because you know it's it's so difficult to find small organizations having a very good data privacy structure in place. They might be having something for data security, but not enough for data privacy. So again, you need to work with the vendors to ensure that data protection is appropriately placed for data privacy, and then foster clear communication. You should not be pushing your vendors too much in the way that they get so shit scared of you that whenever something goes wrong, they will never call you. Has to be a mutual respect and mutual understanding of each other, so that even if something does go wrong, they feel confident that they can reach out to you, and you both can work it out together. So that's what I meant by fostering a clear communication environment. So how do you prepare for DORA? Let me break down the 5 pillars and the steps for compliance. So number one would be the asset risk management. As you've seen, this is covered under Articles 5 to 14 of DORA, and it speaks about establishing your robust governance framework, the enterprise strategy, and then having an accountability structure that involves your senior management. Next would be the ICT incident management, which is covered under Article 17 to 21. And this speaks about setting up a structured ICT incident register, developing processes for timely detection, reporting, and resolution, and then reporting obligations to authorities for major ICT incidents. Now, this thing is required with yourself also and with your third parties also. Rather, all of it is required. But incident management will really be the bedrock that in case there is a operational resilience issue or a security breach, how well the incident management was planned would really define how much you will be penalized. Right? So ensure that your ICT management, incident management framework is very much up to the mark. Then the testing part. Then conduct the threat-led penetration testing for critical entities to simulate the third party, to simulate the real world attack scenarios. Now, try not to get this done from the cheapest vendor available, because many a time the VAPTs and all are done by the cheapest vendor possible in the market. And that is something which is really not advisable. You should be getting this done by really top of the line third party, third party penetration testing providers. I would suggest you to look up something like a CREST approved organization. Like we are a CREST approved. CREST is a world leading body for empanelment of penetration testing service providers. Perhaps you can tie up with one of them. We are one of them rather. And then establishing a very realistic and regular testing schedules. Proactively identify. Like we have seen in very, very critical environments, we have seen that they are literally testing their resilience every weekend. Can you believe that? Saturday, Sunday, every Saturday. And ensuring that the testing scope encompasses both the internal and the external ICT environment, not just your internal, includes your third parties also. Next to come is the third party risk management. We've done this like quite a few times, that you need to be very, very clear as to what your third parties will be doing, documenting your requirements and ensuring that they are there in sync with your organizational risk requirements. And this is again covered under Articles 28 to 44 of DORA. And the fifth pillar is information and intelligence sharing. Now this becomes like a hive mentality, as you have seen. What I mean by that is that it requires that you should be sharing information with other ICT or with other organizations in the financial sector, so that there is a group learning. There is a group learning to ensure that there is a if somebody learns something, then they should be letting the other organizations also know as to what's happening in the industry. Maybe a new zero has been exploited. Maybe a common application that is used across the particular sector, say of finance or insurance or market analysis. So that should be divulged openly so that others are also brought up to speed and it doesn't become like an epidemic in the industry. And this is like covered in the entire chapter 6 of DORA. So this is information and intelligence sharing is something which is really critical to ensure that, you know, to ensure that the spread of something like a threat, like a malware and all, is gets stemmed in the early stages itself. Then how do you prepare for DORA? Very simple, which applies for every standard. Is that understand the understand the regulation. Familiarize yourself with the regulation. Just download the standard for free and you can read it. And then next would be the conducting a gap analysis. This is something which is like how you're working now and what the standard expectations are. Then would be aligning your governance structure. That is, whatever your overall organizational strategy and for ICT risk management and operational resilience is there, that is carried forward in a consistent manner. And then finally would be the implementing the robust ICT risk management. So this is outlined in Article 5. So you have identified and you have documented your governance structure for risk management. Now you need to roll it out and ensure that it is monitored in an ongoing manner and the testing is also done. Third party risk management. Again, we are back over there as per Article 7. Then you need to prepare for the incident reporting. These are like Article 14 and entire Article 14 is there. And then regularly test the operational resilience. You might be having the best procedures written, but if you don't have the systems in place for testing it, it's really of no point. Then engage with the regulators and the industry peers. That is, ensure that they are updated, that you are updated, that you are updating others with compliance trends in your organization, in industry standards, and then share your insights and collaborate on the best practices. So this is actually a mandate as per Article 18 of the standard. Quick look at the FAQs. Now we are slowly and rushing towards closure of the webinar, so don't worry, just give me 5 more minutes. So what will happen if your company is not DORA compliant and certified? So it will lead to penalties, it will lead to potential legal action. Now again, let me get the terminologies clear. That is, there is no certificate or something, and so you need to get audited to confirm your your adherence to the standard. Then of course it will lead to regulatory scrutiny increase because you're not adhere to it. Businesses may face suspension from critical financial activities. Some banks or market authorities might simply say we don't want to work with you. They will lose their customer trust and severe breach could result in the license revocation by the authorities. Then who can audit? Of course, there is no single body that has been appointed. There has to be a due diligence that is to be done for internal audit and external audit. So you can have your organization, in your organization, internal people who are reporting to in an independent way to the board doing the internal audit, but they should be like industry experts or knowing the subject very well with regards to risk management and information security, cybersecurity. And then more important also would be to appoint third party independent auditor firms like our company, Vista InfoSec, with expertise in DORA compliance and other standards for a very impartial review. So that is where this is what would help. So in case your client is asking that are you DORA compliant, you have the audit report, you have the audit sign-offs in place or a letter of confidence that shows that you are audit DORA compliant. And then the regulatory authorities are the national supervisor bodies, and they may conduct independent audits to ensure that you're compliant with DORA. And then there's the legal and compliance experts that can also audit the company's adherence to DORA, right? So what are the areas to be covered? This you've already seen. There is risk management, incident management, operational resilience, third-party risk management, and then the testing of the operational resilience. And then last but not the least is the compliance with the European Union regulatory requirement. Then what is the audit period? Like any standard, it is 1 year of the recent operational 1 year, I should say that. And it should cover all the ICT related incidents, risk management activities, and resilience measures within that period to be reviewed. And then, of course, the audit is required, audit evidence is required, not just of your policies, procedures, but also of your records. Then how often needs to be done? So, as I said, at least once a year. And it should be done before that once a year should start on or before January 17, 2025. So in case you are not already done that, you should start moving with it immediately. Do drop us a line if you need a help on that. And the regular testing is required to ensure that the compliance is there with the DORA's operational resilience standard. And then there's a advanced threat penetration testing is mandated every 3 years for critical entities. Okay, not the DORA audit has to be done every 3 years, but the advanced threat-led penetration testing, ELPT as it is called, that has to be done minimum once every 3 years. Now, this frequency of the audits may be influenced by the organization's risk profile. So if you have a very high risk organization, very high profile organization, the frequency would change. It might even become a lot lesser. So we get asked that do these audit reports need to be submitted to some government body? It may be required to be submitted with your NCA, National Competent Authorities in the US. Or the regulatory body might ask you to submit your compliance reviews or audit report. And here, more than an internal audit report, a third party external audit report would be of more consequence. So again, the submission may depend on your organization sector, jurisdiction, and your risk profile. Okay, so that brings me to the end, and just a quick brief on that's our our LinkedIn page. Do follow it to remain updated. That's our contact numbers in the UK, US, Singapore, and India. That's our email addresses. Also, do drop us a line, or you can visit our webpage. Do let us know if there are more queries, or if you think we can help out in any way. And then there's a gentle reminder of the survey. As now this webinar is ending, there will be a survey request at the end. Please do fill it up. It will really help us understand how we have done and what are the points for improvement. So thank you again for sharing your valuable time. I look forward to seeing you again in my next webinar. I really hope sincerely that this webinar was of use to you. Thank you again, and have a nice evening ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.